Welcome back to the channel, guys. Yesterday, I saw this design on Dribble, and I thought it would be cool to try to re-implement it with, Nuxt and Tailwind. It's just the UI, no functionality just yet, but I'm gonna just walk you through how I went about doing this. Cool. So we have the sidebar over here with some nav links. This will be using Nuxt link, of course. The labels down here, like I said, no functionality. It's pure UI. Whenever we click on one of these things, we get the details on this side, and we can actually go back and click on something else, get another email. As you can see, there are some tooltips in place. This is provided by the floating view package. I think that's what it's called. So let's just jump into VS Code and I'll show you how I went about getting all of this to work. It's somewhat responsive, not really responsive. If I should minimize this thing, this is what it looks like on this size computer. Go down to iPad, then we have this thing. Let me just refresh so that the user agent is updated. When we click on none of these things, you can see it just completely hides the list of emails. Then we go back, and it's the same thing for mobile phones. Cool. So let's just jump into VS Code and start building this thing out. All right, so now in VS Code, I have the folder that I want to create my project in open. Terminal open, and I'm just going to go ahead and quickly create the Nuxt application. So that's npx Nuxt init, and the dot is just to tell the CLI to create the project in this current directory. So that should be done soon, and it is. Then I'm going to go ahead and install the dependencies with yarn. All right, so all the dependencies are now installed. Let me go ahead and switch to my Nuxt profile in VS Code. All right, zoom in back a little. Cool. All right, so the extensions I'm using, not a very long list. The git ignore generator, this is just so I can update my git ignore files properly. So let me go ahead and do that. Currently, the default one just has these items in it. Zoom in a little so you can see better. And the truth is, you may need to be ignoring more files than just this. So I'm going to open the command palette with F1 and then say git, and you can see it's given the option to generate the git ignore file. We already have one, so it's asking if I want to update or override. I'll override for now. It's suggesting Windows and Visual Studio Code. Let me just go ahead and add the node presets as well, and the presets for Mac. Yeah, so we have 4 selected. Click OK, and now we're ignoring all of these files. So save that, close that. We have the auto close and auto rename tags. This is very good for when you're writing HTML. The duplicate button is just so that I can right click on these files, duplicate them quickly. I don't always use this in every project, but it's pretty handy. GitHub Copilot, I don't need to say much about this. We'll see it in action. Iconify IntelliSense. This thing just prints the actual icon in VS Code rather than the name. So if you get an icon from the Iconist website and you use it in VS Code, it will actually print the actual icon versus the name. So let me see if I can actually demonstrate this. So if in here I have an icon, popular icon, MDI check. Oh, it won't work here. Let's see, MDI check yeah, it actually prints the icon rather than just showing the name. And when you click on it, you get the name. So that's what this extension does. Next, material icon theme to make the icons here look pretty. Monakai, this is my color scheme. The dark color right here that you're seeing. Prettier, self-explanatory, code formatter. npm outdated. What this package does is, or this extension, sorry, it tells me what I need to update in my package.json file. So you can see here, it's saying that everything is good. We have a check mark beside Nuxt. And there's this little thing right here. I don't know why that's not reloading. Let me reload VS Code. Maybe we're having an issue that I don't know about. And you can see I get a little squiggly and it's saying that an update is available. So I can just press Control and the full stop on your keyboard, and it will give you the option to update the newest version, newest stable version. Next on the list, we have pretty TypeScript errors. And this is somewhat self-explanatory. Instead of the default TypeScript error that you get, usually in VS Code, which is this thing, it gives you this thing. So you won't always use this, but comes in handy. Tailwind IntelliSense, self-explanatory. We use this to get the help from, whenever we add Tailwind to our project. The Volar extension, this is recommended now for Vue. Install Volar, it will help you with development. And this is the snippet extension that I like to use. There are a lot of snippet extensions out there. Just pick the one that works for you and you'll be good to go. All right, cool. Now that that's out of the way, my extensions, you will realize that I don't have the node modules folder showing, nor the package lock file showing. And if I press Control and comma on my keyboard, you can see if I type in exclude that I excluded them from the editor. I don't need to see them really and truly. So I just remove them. Cool. All right. So let's start configuring our application. I think we need to install some packages, right? Let me just open the terminal and clear it. And I'm going to say yarn add as dev dependency. And I want to add the Nuxt.js device module. And this will help us to detect whenever we are on mobile versus a desktop versus whatever. Next, we already have the types for node. I'm going to add auto prefixer. So that's auto prefixer, and this is for Tailwind. I'm going to add the Nuxt icon module, and this will just help us with displaying icons from the Iconist website. Post CSS, and of course Tailwind CSS. So these are the dev dependencies that we need. Just go ahead and install those. All right, those dev dependencies are installed. Let's add some actual dependencies. So let me clear terminal, yarn add, and I'm going to use the Nuxt scroll bar module. This is just so we have a nice scroll bar on Windows, that Mac-like scroll bar. The next package that we want to add as a dependency is the file extension icon. And I'll just be using this in the email list. So, if there's an attachment, we can detect the type of attachment that it is and display the appropriate icon for that. Cool. We also want to add the floating view package, and this will provide us with tooltips and some drop downs if we need it. So let's install those. All right, so the dependencies are out of the way. Let's move into some other configuration, to be exact, or Tailwind configuration. We can create the tailwind.config file manually, but let's use the actual init function from their CLI. I think that's what it is. So we go npx tailwind css init, enter, and that should create our config file, and it did. So here we go, one Tailwind config file right here, and let's just add the content array. Let's populate the content array. So this content array is just telling Tailwind where to look for in our code to look for the styles, right? So where will we be using classes in our code? We'll be using them in the components folder, the layouts folder, pages folder, plugins, plugins. Nah, don't need that. And the app.view. So for this, I'm gonna be leaving it like that. We also want to add some custom font and colors. So let me just go ahead and import the colors from Tailwind CSS. And I also want the default theme from Tailwind CSS as well. And to add our custom stuff without overwriting everything, we're going to add it to the extend object. Yeah. So font family is the first thing that we want to extend. We want to extend the sans font family. And that should be int var. This is the family that we're going to use. And then we're going to add the default sans font families as fallback. Cool. Next, we want to add the colors. And we're going to set the primary color. The default is going to be colors.blue. No, not black, blue. And 500. And then we're going to just spread the rest of the colors in here. Cool. So that should be it for the Tailwind config. Next, we want to look at our Nuxt config, right? So we have to configure post CSS, and we do that by adding this object to our Nuxt config. We then want to enable takeover mode. So we're going to say TypeScript, disable the shim generation, right? And then we're going to go to extensions. We're going to say, we're going to type in add built-in and then search for TypeScript and disable it in this workspace. Cool. You'll have to reload VS Code. But if you look down here, you'll see that we have takeover mode enabled. All right, let's clear this. Next, we want to add the different Nuxt modules. So we're going to create our modules array. And let me just grab these in rather than typing them. Grab these and paste them in rather than type them out. So we're adding the Nuxt scroll bar module that we installed earlier, the Nuxt icon that we installed earlier, and the Nuxt device module. So let's save that. And then we want to create our CSS file. Now, this CSS file is where we're going to add our Tailwind directives. So we're going to say assets, that's the name of the folder. Then inside of that, we're going to have a CSS folder. And then we're going to have our main.css file. Cool. Inside of this main.css file, we're going to go ahead and add our Tailwind directives. We can save that, right? And then now back in our Nuxt config, we're going to register, quote unquote, register this CSS file. So we're going to say CSS, it's an array, and it should be this file, assets css main.css. So save that. And then lastly, we want to add the font family, the link to our font style sheet to the entire application. We have two ways of doing this. We can add it to the app.view here via the use head composable that Nuxt provides, but we're going to do it in our Nuxt config. So we're going to say app. We're going to say we want the head object, and we're going to set a title. Let's see, our title will be Nuxt 3 email dashboard. Yeah. And then we're going to create the link array. And this is where we can actually add the style sheet. So I'm going to copy and paste these in. I'm using the Intel font from this website. This guy is the creator of the font. It's really cool. I really like it. So let's save this. And then we can move on to other configurations. But before I do, let me just generate the types again by going to the npm scripts and running the post install script. So the types are generated. Good. Now we can actually add the app config file to our folder. So app.config.ts. So our app config file will be used to set the default size of our Nuxt icon. We're going to set it to 24 pixels. And we can also set other stuff here for use within our application. But for now, let's just set this. So we're going to export the default define app config. And here we should have access to the Nuxt icon. Let's see what's happening here. Define app config. Ah, there we go. Nuxt icon. And the size, we're going to set it to 24 pixels. All right, cool. So let's close that. Next, I think we should configure prettier. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a .prettier RC file. And these are some of the settings that I like to use at Prettier. You can change this if you don't like your code looking, like this, but this is the format that I use. Next, we're going to create the prettier ignore file. So .prettier ignore, and it's usually recommended that you model this ignore file of your git ignore, right? So I'm just going to paste everything in and probably add like the package lock JSON file and the yarn.lock file. So these two files, I don't think we need our formatter to be formatting these two as well. So let's just add them to the prettier ignore file. Cool. Next up, we want to create the floating view plugin, right? So that we can use it throughout our application. So I'm going to create a new folder called plugins. I'm going to add the floating.ts file to it. And what this will do, like I said, is just register the floating view package so that we can use it throughout our application. So we're importing the actual thing here. Then the styles, we could also add this to the CSS array in our Nuxt config here, but I'm going to leave it here so we have everything for floating view in one place. Then we're going to say Nuxt app, view app, and then we're going to register the floating view plugin. So let's save that. Next, we are going to start writing the code inside of our app.view file. Usually, if you're going to create an application that have different pages, you'd add the Nuxt page component here, and then you would, why is this giving me a squiggly? Oh, it's missing the end tag. Yeah, you'd add the Nuxt page component here, and then you would create the pages folder and then add your pages. but we only have a single page in this UI, so there's no need for this. Cool. So let's start with the app view file and build out our UI. Cool. So the first div is going to have a class of flex because the different elements are just going to be side by side in the UI. Sidebar is going to be to the far left, the list of messages in the middle, and the details on the right. Cool. So we're going to create a component that will have our sidebar. Cool. So come here to the file directory, and we're going to say components sidebar. Yeah. Let's just go vbase setup, here setup, right? Save that. And we're going to bring in our sidebar. Cool. Now inside, let me close these. Inside our sidebar, this is what it will actually look like. So we're going to have the parent element being our Nuxt scroll bar. And this was actually provided by, this was actually provided by the module installed here, the Nuxt scroll bar module. We're going to give it a tag of aside. And we're going to add some classes to it. Cool. So the first class we want to add is fixed, because it's going to be fixed to the left of our screen. We're going to give it a height of screen. It's going to be hidden on mobile devices and displayed on medium devices and up. We're going to give it a width of width of 288 pixels, which is W72 in Tailwind land, only on medium devices and up. Cool. We're going to give it a border to the right. We're going to change the color of the border. I'm going to use zinc 700, and I'm going to give it a background of zinc. Wait, PG zinc. There we go. 900. Cool. And I'm going to say that this element should not shrink. Those are the classes for the parent scroll bar. Inside of this, the first child element is going to be a list of links. The links are going to be in an array in our script tab. So these are going to be the sidebar main links. Yeah. So we're going to say const main links is equal to an array of objects, title being a string, the icon being a string, and just a link to a hash. Cool. So this is going to be the structure for array. So instead of typing these out, let me just copy and paste them over. So we have the title, icon, link, and we also have a count for some of them. All right. This count will be displayed on the right of the link item. So let me just save that. And up here in our markup, we are going to say that we want to have nav elements. We will have a class of flex. Flex direction will be column. There's going to be a gap of 2 between each element. It's going to be 16 pixel padding to the left and right. And it's going to be empty 10. So it's a margin top of 40 pixels. Cool. Now the Nuxt link is what we're going to use to render these items. we are going to use the v4 directive. And we're going to say for ml in main links, yeah, we're going to add a key. And the key is going to be ml dot, I think we can use a title. All right. And let's give this some utility classes. So it's going to be a flex item. We're going to add group to it as well, because we want to do stuff to the child elements whenever we hover over the parent element, which is going to be the Nuxt link right here. This is going to act as the parent element, the stuff inside child elements. Item center, justify between px3, py2, rounded LG, so that's the border radius. The text is going to be zinc 400, and when you hover, the text is going to be primary 50, so that very light blue color, almost white. And when you hover, also we want the background to be your primary color. Cool. We also want to add some transition to this, so the colors transition smoothly. Cool. Now inside of this, we are going to display our items. So the first element inside of this Nuxt link is going to be a div, and it's going to have the classes of flex, item center, not start, and it's going to have a space of 12 pixels between the elements within this div. The first element is going to be the icon, and we're going to bind the name to the ml.icon. All right, and we're going to give it a size of 18. Next, we have a span that will be next to it, and this is just going to display the text. All right, we're going to give it a class of text sm, so that's font size 14. Let's save that. To the right of this element, we will have a span tag. Cool. And this will only be displayed if there is a count value. Yeah. We're going to add some classes to this as well. First, we want it to have margin left of auto, so it's pushed away from our title and icon. We're going to give it a text size of 12 pixels, font size of 12 pixels, and an opacity of about 70 right there. Then whenever we hover over the parent element, right, we want the opacity to be 100. And of course, this element will display the count. So let's save that and go to our app.view file. There's something else that we need to do in our script setup. We need to tell the application to use some global styles. Cool. So here, I'm going to use the use head composable, and I'm going to add something to the body attributes thing. I need a semicolon here. And I'm going to say I want to add a class, right? No, the class I'm going to add is bgzinc 950. The text should be zinc 50, and should have a minimum height of a screen. Yeah. So let's go ahead and save that. I'm going to, oh yeah, I need to close the script out. There we go. Yeah, now that's saved properly. All right, cool. So we can start our application by running yarn dev. Let's just ensure we have no problems in our editor. All right, cool, no errors. And now if we jump to Chrome, then we can see this is what we just created. Cool. So for the icons, like I said, you can visit this website and pick any icon pack to use, right? The one I'm using is Solar. So you can see we have this inbox right here, duotone. If I should type in inbox, then you can see this is the icon that I use. Cool. And it's the same for the rest of them. Star, it's this one, and the list goes on. Yeah. As for the Nuxt modules, if you visit the Nuxt website, go to the module section. This is the device module. Let's see, the Nuxt icon module. This is the Nuxt icon module. So if you want to learn more about it, you can just visit the documentation, learn how to configure it and all of that good stuff. And the scroll bar is actually a newer one. It's not registered as yet, but it's this package right here. Cool. So if you visit this page on NPM, you'll actually see how to install it and register it and use it, and all the options that you can actually pass to it. I think it's built on top of the perfect scroll bar, right? So you can check out that documentation as well to learn more about how it works. So let me just close these. So we have our sidebar coming along pretty nicely. Let me just minimize this and head back to VS Code. So now that our sidebar is in place, we want to go ahead and add the list of messages. Yeah. And we're going to create another component for that. It's going to be called inbox message. Cool. We're also going to add components within this component. So let's just start by creating a new folder. I'm going to call it inbox. And then the message component within that. Cool. Save that. And again, we're going to use the Nuxt scroll bar as our parent element. Not sure why this isn't working properly, but let's just delete this. Let's give this a class of full with full on medium devices and up, and give it a height of 100 VH. Let's save that. Now inside of this component, we're going to have another component that we're going to call heading, right? So let me just go ahead and create the heading component. Use a snippet to scaffold that out. And inside our heading component, we're going to be using a lot of classes. So our parent element on medium devices and up is going to have a padding of 7 all around, which translates to 28 pixels. Yeah. On smaller devices, it's going to be P5, which is 20 pixels. We're going to have a border at the bottom. And then we want to change the border color to zinc 800. Cool. Let's save that. Now, we're going to add a set of buttons to the heading, right? So we're going to say button, and inside of this button, we're just going to display an icon. Now, the name of this icon is going to be the double left arrow. And like I said, you can just copy these icon names from the website and use them inside the name attribute of this component. Yeah. So this name prop, just copy the name of the icon from the website and paste it here, and it will actually display it. For some strange reason, the Iconify IntelliSense thing is not picking up on this icon set. I don't know why, but that's fine. That's fine. Let me just go ahead and copy the classes for this button. So we have a text of zinc 400, margin bottom 5. Whenever you hover over this button, it's going to turn the text to blue. We have a padding of 1, transition, rounded LG, and when you hover over it, the background is going to become blue 400 with an opacity of 0.2, as you can see here. So let's save that. We are going to add our first tooltip, right? And according to the view floating documentation, you can add the directive like this and hit save. Now in my message component, I'm going to register this heading component that I just created. So let me just write a comment, inbox heading. And I'm going to say inbox heading, close that, save it. And then inside of the app.view, let me close this. Inside app.view, we are going to register our list of messages. So this is going to be the message list area. And I'm going to say inbox message, close that. Everything's still good in the terminal. Let me go back to Chrome and see what's happening. So here we have our button that we just created, and we can see that the tooltip is working properly. It's kind of big, so I think we should reduce the size of this, right? Let's just jump back to VS Code and get that done. So in VS Code, we'll go to the assets, main.css file. So in our main.css file, we're going to add the tooltip styles. And it's going to be v upper underscore underscore inner. And we're going to apply text SX to our tooltip. So this should make the text a little bit smaller. Cool. So our message list area is working properly. The heading is being displayed properly. Before we do anything further on the messages, let's just finish up the sidebar because we actually didn't finish this. This is the first set of links. We should add a second set, which is going to act as the labels, right? So let me go ahead and add a divider component because we're going to need that. And this can be a template. It should be an HR with some classes. Let me go ahead and find the styles for this. So it's going to have border, and the border is going to be zinc 700. Let's save that, close it. Now in our sidebar, we are going to add this divider right after this nav. So divider right here. And we want it to have a margin of 10 top. Cool. So that's 40 pixels. All right. After that, we're gonna add our labels. And this is going to be a div with px4 and my10. Yeah. Now our labels is going to look something like this, right? So it's an array of objects with title, color, and count. Cool. So let's save that. And inside our markup, we are going to say we want to display a button that will hide and show our labels, right? So we're going to have a button, give it some classes. So the first class is going to be flex, item center, a gap of 3, and a width of full. And this button is going to be an icon. Let me just copy the icon name. Paste that in. So it's going to be a drop down icon essentially. And let's give it a size of 18. And beside it, we're just going to have the text labels. Yeah. And let's make this small. So text SM. Hit save. Let's go back to Chrome and see what we have here. So we have the labels button, and as you can see, our divider is right here. Cool. So back to VS Code. We're going to say that we want our icon to rotate whenever we click on this button. So in order to do that, we have to register some state that will track if this is expanded or not. Cool. So to do that, I'm going to have a ref down here that says show labels. And this show labels ref, whenever we click on this button, it should invert that value. So it's going to be equal to what show label is not. So if it's false, which it is by default, then it's going to turn true. And when you click it again, it's going to turn back to false, and it goes on and on. So we're going to save that. And we want to add some dynamic classes to our icon. So we're going to bind class, create an array, and we're going to say if show labels is true, then we want to apply these classes. Otherwise, apply these on the right. So we're not going to do anything if it's false, but if it's true, we want to actually rotate the icon. So we're going to add transform and rotate 180 on this thing. We're going to also add some regular classes, right? So regular classes, transition, so it transitions smoothly, and we're going to update the duration to 300 milliseconds. Yeah. So in Chrome, when we click on this thing, it rotates properly. So back in VS Code, we have the rotation taking place. Now we're going to display the links based on the truthiness of this value. Yeah. So we're going to create nav tag, and we're going to say vif show labels. So only display this thing if this value is true. Let's add some classes to it. So margin top of 5, and it's going to be a flex column element. We're going to have the Nuxt link, right? It's not going to go anywhere right now, but we're going to use the v-for directive again, and we're going to loop over the items inside this labels array. Cool. So for L in labels, let's add a key. It's going to be L.title. And let's just scaffold out how these labels are going to look. So on the left of the label, we're going to have a little dot with this color, right? And then on the far right, we're going to have the count if there's a count present. Yep. So let's go ahead and add the classes to this. We're going to say it should be flex, item center, and gap 2. Yeah. First element is going to be that little color. So we're going to say class. It's going to be inline block, a width of 2, a height of 2. Oops. And rounded full. Yeah. We also want to add the color that's here to the background of this thing. So we're going to add a dynamic class. So we're going to bind the class and we're going to add l.color to the array. Next, we're going to add our span with the actual label title. So this should be l.title. And let's add some classes to this. Or just one. We're going to make text a little bit smaller. Now for the item on the far right, it's going to be exactly what Copilot is suggesting here. So we're going to only display it if the l.count value is present. And the classes we want to add is margin left auto, a text of XS, which is font size as 12 pixels. We're going to make the opacity at 0.7. And then whenever we hover over the parent element, which is going to be this Nuxt link, we're going to have opacity of 100. So let's just go ahead and add the classes to the Nuxt link up here. So the first class we want to add is going to be a flex items center, not start. We're going to justify between. We're going to give this some border radius of 8 pixels. We're going to add some padding all around. Whenever we hover on this element, we want the background to become zinc 700, and we want smooth transition. So let's save this and go back to Chrome. And this is what we have. This is our list of labels. Cool. So when you click here, it disappears. But I think we should add some transition to this element appearing and disappearing. So let's just add that real quick. So back to VS Code, we are going to add the transition element over this thing, right? So we're going to come here and we're going to say transition. Let's wrap the nav element with it. And we're going to give it a name of labels. Yeah, let's give it a name of labels and save that. Now, in order for this transition to work, we have to write the transition logic ourselves. So just copy labels and go to our CSS file. And in our CSS file, let's just add the transition for our labels, right? So transition for labels. And we're going to say dot labels interactive. So whenever the label transition element is coming into view or leaving view, we want to add these styles to it. So transition of all, that's too long, so let's say 2 seconds, and ease of ease. Cool. Next we want to say labels enter from, and then labels leave to. We want to say the opacity should be 0 when it's entering and leaving, and it should slide on the y-axis, not the x-axis, by negative 10 pixels. Cool. So let's save that. Let's go back to Chrome and see what that looks like. So when we click, you can see there's a subtle sliding down of the elements, and it slides back up. So slide down, slide up, slide down, slide up. Cool. So back to VS Code. Yeah. Now that we have all of this style out of the way for our sidebar, yeah, I think we can move back to our message list. So let's close this, let's close that, and let's go to our message list component right here. Yeah. So we have the heading being displayed. Yeah. The heading isn't complete as yet, so we only have one button up here. So next we need to add the title and a button to do the filtering, right? So let's go ahead and add that right now. So we're going to give it a class of flex, item center, gap of 10. And then we're going to add our H1 here. Just going to say inbox. Ideally, this should change dynamically based on the item that you select from the sidebar. But like I said, functionality, not so much in place right now. This is just UI. For H1, you're going to have the text to Excel class added, and it's going to be bold. Yeah. Next to this is going to be a button, and this button is going to display an icon. The name of this icon is going to be filter. It's going to be a filter icon. So let me just replace this with the correct name and change the size to 18. And we hit save, and let me just go ahead and copy some styles over for this button. Sure, you don't want to see me type out all of that. Hit save, and then we're going to add a tooltip to this button. Yeah, so it should say filter inbox when we hover over it. So let's just jump back to Chrome so we can see what this looks like. So here, let me see, V tooltip. Refresh this page. There we go. So our tooltips are working. We have the back right here and the filter right here. So back to VS Code. Next on the list after this heading, we want to add our input field with the create new email beside it. So the way we're going to do that is by creating another flex element. Give it some margin top. And then the container that will actually hold the input field and the icon that's next or inside or on top of the input. So we want this to have a class of relative. And the first element that we're going to add is actually the input. It's going to be of type search. The name is going to be search. The ID is going to be search. Now we want to also add placeholder of a search to this. Yeah, let's save that. And now for the classes. So we're going to style our input field. The background is going to be Zinc 900. On medium devices and up, we're going to have minimum width of 300 pixels, and this is an arbitrary value. We're going to have a width of 280 pixels. Again, another arbitrary value. We're going to give it some border radius. We're going to give it a border. We're going to change the color of the border to zinc 800. We're going to give it a font size of 14 pixels. Some padding on the left and right. And top and bottom, we're going to have padding of 2. And then on the left side only, we're going to give it padding of 9. We want to remove the outline whenever the element is focused. And when it's focused, we also want to change the color of the border to our primary color. And we want smooth transition. Cool. So let's save this and see what it looks like in Chrome. So here we have our input field. So this little space right here is where we're going to put our icon. So if we put something in, cool, that works. All right, back to VS Code. Let's add our icon. So the icon is going to be inside of a span element that's positioned absolute. Yeah. From the left, we're going to have 3. From the top, we're going to have an arbitrary value of 47%. And then we want the negative translate y to be 50%. We're going to also change the color for icon to zinc 500. So let's add our icon. You can see it's being suggested here. Let's change the size to 16. And the name of the icon is magnifier linear. Cool. So let's save that and see what it looks like in Chrome. So icon is here, positioned nicely. Whenever we focus the element, we get this blue border. That's exactly what we want. So back to VS Code. Below or next to or input, we also want to have a button. All right. And this button will act as a button that will create the new emails. So let me just go ahead and add the name and size of this button. Yeah. So it's pen new square linear. Like I said, all these icons can be found on the Iconist website. Let me save that. And instead of typing out all of these classes, let me just go ahead and copy and paste them over. So the tooltip is create a new email. You could also add an SR only class to this thing and say something like click to create email. This way accessibility will be better on your website. But for some websites, this is optional. For some, it's mandatory. Depending on the project that you're creating, you'll need to do this type of thing or not. So let's save this, jump back to Chrome and see what we have. So this is our button. Cool. So we have the input field for searching for an email. Then we have this button that we can click to create an email. Yeah. All right, back to VS Code. Now that our heading area is complete, let's go back to our message list. And for this, we are going to display a list of emails. Yeah. Let's add message list right there. I'm going to have a div with some classes. First class on medium devices and up. We want to have padding all around of 7. And then px3 for smaller devices. On smaller devices as well, we want the padding top and bottom to be py5, which translates to 20 pixels. We also want to give this a max width. So max width of 6 XL, and we want some space between each of the items in the list. So we're going to give it a class of space y2. Yeah. Now, whenever we click on one of these email items, we should display the details. And for that state, we're going to create a global variable with the help of the use state composable from Nuxt. So it's just gonna be, a state that detects if the detail should be shown or not. By default, it's gonna be false. And you're gonna see how that's used in a second. So for this div right here, all right, we're gonna add the click event to this. And we just want to invert whatever this value is. Yeah. So whenever we click on this, we want to set the value for message open to the opposite of what it currently is. We're going to use the v4 directive as well to loop over the different messages. I'm not going to create an array of messages. I'm just going to say for n in about 10. And then I'm going to add some classes to the container. So it should have a padding of 5. We're going to give it some border radius as well. So that's rounded LG. Whenever we hover, we want the background to change, and we're going to say BG Zinc 800, and we're going to reduce the opacity to 20%. We also want the cursor to change to the pointer cursor, just to indicate to users that you can actually click on this element. Inside this div, we're going to create another one, and it's going to have a class of flex. So flex item center and justify between. Within this element, within this div, we're gonna have our heading. So it's gonna say interview dash data agency, and we're gonna add the TextSM class to this p tag. So that's just gonna change the font size to 14 pixels. Below this title, we're going to, or next to it, we're gonna add the time. So it's gonna be 5 hours ago. And of course, we're gonna add the TextXS class to this to change the font size to 12. And we're gonna change the opacity or the color of this text. So it's gonna be text zinc 400. So let's save that. And then now below this, we are going to add another paragraph with some text, which would represent the preview text inside the message card that this thing is. So we're just going to use some lorem ipsum for now. And then we're going to give this some utility classes. So TextSM is the first one to change the font size to 14. We're going to give it some margin from the top, margin of 12 pixels from the top. Change the color to text zinc 500. And then we're going to use the line clamp, which is now built into Tailwind. Some time ago, you would have to install this as a separate Tailwind package, but they actually integrated it into the main thing now, so you can use it like that. All right, so let's just take a look at what this looks like in our browser. So you can see this is our list of messages, and when we hover, we have this little you can see the background being updated. It's very subtle, and that's kind of what we want. Cool. So back to VS Code. We are going to display any attachment that may be in our email. And to do this, we create a div. Let's add some utility classes. So we're going to give it some margin from the top. It's going to be a flex container and justify between. So the first child element will be a div. Let's add some utility classes to it. It's going to be a flex container as well. Items are going to be aligned center. Let's give it gap of 3, which would translate to 12 pixels between the items. We're going to change the text size to XS, which is a font size of 12 pixels. We're going to change the actual color of the text to zinc 300. And then change the background to zinc 900. Give it some padding on the left and right, and top and bottom. And then we're going to give it some border radius. Cool. Now here, we're going to use the file extension icons package. So let me just go ahead and import that. So file extension icon JS. And from this package, we want to pull in the get material file icon function, I guess, from this package. So up here, depending on the name of the attachment, it's going to display an icon, an appropriate icon. Cool. We want to create an image, and we're going to bind the source of this image to the result of the get material file icon function. And in here, we're going to pass in the name of the actual file. So I'm going to call this car1.png. So let's say the user attached this file to our email. The alt, we can call this car image attachment. To this image tag, we also want to add some classes. So we're going to say object contain, and then we want to give the image a height of 16 pixels. Yeah. So let's save that. And then to the right of this image, we want to add the name of the attachment. And we can say something like car1.png. And let's just save that. So let's jump to Chrome and see what this actually looks like. And you can see here where this would be the attachment below the preview of our actual message. Cool. So back to VS Code. To the far right of this attachment, we also want to add an icon that would represent if this message or email is a starred email. Cool. So it would be after this div that we would create a button. And within this button, we're going to render an icon. And the name of the icon is stars bold duotone. So let me just copy that over. Right there. And let's change the size to 18. We also want to add the text amber 400 utility class to this to change the color of the icon. So if we should save that, go back to Chrome, you can see where this little icon is being displayed down here. And of course, clicking this would remove it from the list of starred messages or emails. Cool. Now, that would be it for the message component right here. Don't think we need to add anything else. So next up, we are going to look at adding the details of each message, right? Now, to accomplish that, we're going to create another file inside this inbox. It's going to be details. That's the name of the folder. And inside, we're going to have the heading dot view. Yeah. So let's go ahead and create that file. And we just use that snippet to scaffold the structure of our file. Within this details heading, we are going to go ahead and add the navigation bars to the details section of our email. So whenever we click on an email from the list, this will open a section to the right that will show the details of that email. Yeah. All right, to start out, we are going to add some classes to the parent div. Yeah. So class of flex, item center, justify end, because we want to push the elements within this div towards the right of the container. We're going to have a gap of 3. So that's 12 pixels between each item within this element or within this flex container. We're going to give it a padding top and bottom of 20 pixels, padding left and right of 12 pixels, and we're going to give it a border at the bottom, and then the border color will be zinc 800. So let's go ahead and save that. And within our app.view file, because you can see here, we only have the inbox message component registered. So to the right of this, we're going to add the message details. And inside this message details, under this message detail comment, we're going to add a div. Let's give it some classes. So it's going to have a height of screen. It's going to have a position of relative, because we want to display an absolute element within this parent element. On medium devices and up, we're going to have a width of full. And then otherwise, we're going to have a width of screen. So on medium devices, we're going to have a width of 100%. Medium devices and up, and on smaller devices, the width is going to be 100 viewport width. Yeah. We want to add the transition utility class, which will just provide a smooth transition between the different states. We're going to give it border left and change the border color to zinc 800. Now inside this div is where we're going to register this component. Yeah. So this details heading component, we're going to go ahead and add it right here. So let's add a comment. Heading of details. And it's going to be this component. Now, this component should not be displayed by default. It should only be here when we click on an element that's within the list of messages. So when we click on one of the emails, that's when they should get displayed. You can recall where we actually registered this. We actually use this use state right here to determine if the details should be displayed or not. Now, because we're using the use state composable, we can actually use this same value right over here. And because they share the same key, this will act as a global state within our application. Cool. So we can come here and say that we only want to display this thing if this is true. So if this value is true, then show this. If not, then hide it. So let's look at this in action inside of Chrome. So here, by default, we have nothing on this side. But then if we click on one of these, you can see where this detail section get displayed. Cool. And this is the header that we're adding actually. No, this is what we're styling now. This thing. So if we click, it inverts the value of the message open variable. And if we click again, it inverts it and it goes on and on for each. Cool. So back to VS Code. We're gonna say in the heading that we're creating here, we want to add a few buttons to this header. Cool. The first one is gonna have a tooltip, and that tooltip is going to say ask for help. We're also going to add some classes. So it's going to be text zinc of 500. Whenever we hover over the button, we're going to change the text color to a lighter color. So that's text zinc 100. And let's just add transition to the colors here. Inside of this button, we're going to display an icon. Let's change the size to 22. And the name of the icon will be question circle bold duotone. So let me go ahead and save that. And let's just see what that looks like within our browser. So this is the icon here. You can see the tooltip in action. And when we hover, the color changes a bit. Yeah. So back to VS Code. We're going to do the same for two more icons or two more buttons. So let me just copy this down two more times. I'm going to change the name of the icon. So our second icon will be the settings icon, and the tooltip should say view settings. The third icon will be the menu.square bold duotone icon. And the tooltip for this should say open menu. Let's save that. And next to the icons, we actually want to display our profile image. So let me just go ahead and add that image real quick. Let's add some classes to our image. So it's gonna have rounded full, some margin from the left, 12 pixels to be exact. Gonna have a width of 6, which is 24 pixels, and the same height. We're gonna say shrink 0, so flex shrink 0. We're gonna say object cover, right? So the object figure is going to be cover. We're gonna give it it's a ring, and then we're gonna reduce the opacity of our ring color. So we're gonna say ring zinc 800, 30% opacity. So let's save all of that and see what it looks like in Chrome. And there we have it. We have our 3 icons and our image. Let's add a tooltip to our image just to stay consistent. Yeah. We're gonna say v tooltip, and that's equal to update profile. So let's save that. Now below this nav bar, app bar, we are going to add another element. It's going to be like a second app bar in our markup. So let's go ahead and create that. So let's start with div and give it some classes. So a border bottom, change the color of the border. We're going to give it some padding to the left and right, and top and bottom. It's going to be a flex container, item center, and justify between. Within this second navigation bar, we're going to have a few flex containers. The first is going to hold 3 buttons. So let's give this a class of flex, item center, and a gap of 3. Like I said, this will have 3 buttons with some icons. The name of the first icon is arrow left line duotone. And the size of this icon is going to be 18. Cool. To the button, we want to add a few classes. And it's going to be text zinc 500. When we hover over this, we want to change the color to text zinc 200. And let's add some transition. Yeah. We also want to add a tooltip to this. And this tooltip should say go back. So this button will actually be used to close the detail section. So just like we did over here in our app view file, app.view file, we want to use this global state. And remember that it must have the same key for it to be used across your application. And whenever we click on this go back button, we want to just set this to false. Yeah. So when we say at click, this should be equal to false. So let's save that. And let's go to Chrome and see if it actually works. Yeah. So here we have our little go back button. And if you click on it, it goes away. Cool. So back to VS Code, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this button down 2 more times. Of course, not all of them should be closing the menu. So our second icon is going to be the archive icon. So let me just go ahead and replace this with it. And the third icon is going to be our trash icon, which would be used to delete the email. So let's give this a tooltip of delete this email. And the second one should be saying archive this email. Yeah. So back to Chrome. Let's see what that looks like. Now we have all three icons in place. So in the center of this second app bar or navigation bar, we're gonna have another flex container. So we can copy this down, close that tag, and inside of this, we also want to add two buttons and some text. So this section will be used to go to the previous email, view the next email, and show what email you're reading out of how many. Cool. So let me go ahead and just bring this in. Sure, you don't want to watch me type this out. Yeah. So we have our first button that's indicating that we should go to the previous email. We have our little pagination thing right here, which is one of 485 emails. And then this view next email button that will allow us to skip to the next email. So let's just jump to Chrome and see what this looks like. So if we open this, we can see where this is the markup that we just brought in. So previous button, next button, the number of emails, the email that you're currently reading. Cool. Next, we want some buttons to the far right. And these buttons will actually just, help us to like print the email, open it in a new window, and give us some more options. So instead of typing these out, let me just copy and paste them over because the styles are similar. It's a similar setup. You can see we have the flex container here, which is being used right throughout. Yeah. And then we have three buttons. So we have this one, then another one, and another one. And they're all displaying an icon with tooltips to different actions. So let's save that and see what it looks like in Chrome. And here we have it, our print email icon button, the open in new window, and the more options. Yeah. So now we can start working on the actual body of the email. So let's jump back to VS Code. And in our app.view file, we are going to start adding the body of the email here. So let's start with a div. Give it some padding left and right, top and bottom. And then we want to add a border to the bottom. And let's change the border color to zinc 800. The first child element that we want to add in the body of this thing is the sender details. So let's add a comment for the sender details. And this is going to be a flex container. So it's flex column on smaller screens. On larger screens, it's going to be flex row. On larger screens, it's going to be align item center. and justify between. We also want to add a gap of 4 and a margin top of 3. Yeah. So the first part of this flex container is going to have the user's image along with their name and email. Yeah. So let's go ahead and create that div. And we're going to give it a class. Give it the class is flex, item center, and gap 5. Like I said, we'll have an image, and the URL is just a URL from the random user API. Let me just bring that in. The alt is going to be user. Let's add some classes to this. So we have object of cover, going to be rounded full, width of 40 pixels, height of 40 pixels, and we're going to add a little ring. And let's change the ring color to 700 at a 0.1 opacity. So we can save that. And then next to the image, we're going to have, like I said, the name and email of the person that sent the email. So we can say John Doe here. And let's make this text a bit smaller and give it some margin, negative margin from the bottom. And this is just to draw the text below it closer to the p tag. Yeah. So this is going to be the email of the person. So we can say mail to. And here, I'm just gonna use the multi-cursor feature in VS Code and type the email, johndoe@gmail.com. Of course, this is a fictional email. And let's add some classes to the A tag. So we're going to change the size of the text and the color as well. Plus text zinc 500. Let's save that. Next to our image and username, we want to add the time that this email was sent. So I'm going to go ahead and add span here. Let's just say today, 10/17. Just add some random hours ago. And let's add some classes to this span tag. So we want to change the text size and color. And we're going to change the font weight as well. So let's save that and see what it actually looks like in Chrome. So we come to Chrome here, we see where this looks ridiculous. I'm not sure why it looks like this. Let's check the code and see where we went wrong. So back to VS Code. So the issue with our code is that we have height of 40 there instead of 10. So let's save that. Go back to Chrome and we can see where it's not fixed. Yeah. Go back to VS Code. Let's add the message body below this. So below this div tag, I'm going to say message body here. And let's add an h2 tag. And this will just have the title or the subject of our email. Right. Let's add some classes to this. And then below this, we're going to add the actual text, body of the email. So let's add some styles, zinc 400, that's the color of the text. We're going to change it to small. We're going to give it some margin from the top and space between each paragraph within our email. So the first paragraph is just going to be a greeting, something that says hello, I hope you're well. And then second paragraph would be the details. So let's just use some lorem ipsum for that. Below this, we're going to add somewhat of a footer. Right, so we're going to say we want a flex container here. The flex item center, justify between, text size of SM. We want to change the text color as well to zinc 200 and give it some margin from the top. And inside of this, we're going to have two elements. First one, like I said, this will act like a signature. And the second being just a link to some random thing of the sort. So it's going to go to littlework.com. And we want this to be underlined. And we want the underline to be a little bit off the actual text. So let's save this and see what it looks like. And in Chrome, you can see that this is the footer, the body of the email, and the heading that we added. Cool. So back to VS Code. We're going to go ahead and add that fix footer or fix section to the details of our email. So this will just give us the option of replying or forwarding the message to someone else. All right. So let's add a little comment here. This is a fixed bottom bar. Let's make this absolute. Want it to be at the bottom, left 0, width of full, and let's give it a background color of zinc 900 at 50% opacity. We also want to give it some padding to the left and right. We're going to make this a flex container, item center, and justify between. Now inside of this bar, we're going to have two buttons on the left and one button on the right. So the two buttons are going to be inside of flex container again. So flex item center, gap 5 between the buttons. And the first one is going to be the reply button. So the reply button will display an icon. And the name of that icon is reply bold duotone from the solar pack. So let's bring that over. I'm going to update the size. So it's going to be 20 pixels. And next to it, we're going to have the word reply. Now let me go ahead and add some classes to the button itself. So we're going to change the text size. And it should be flex item center and a gap of 2. So let's save that, see what it looks like in Chrome. You can see that this is our bar down here. Now I think we missed the padding class because this is way too small. So let's just go ahead and update that. So on this element up here, after the padding, we're going to give it a height rather than a padding top and bottom. So let's give it a height of 12. And let's create the forward button by copying this down, changing this to forward. And we're going to change the icon name as well. Cool. Now, as for the button that's to the far right, let's just go ahead and implement that. And this button is going to be our button that we use to star this message. So the icon is not going to be this icon. It's actually going to be the stars bold duotone icon. And it's going to have a size of 22. Yeah. And let's just go ahead and add some classes to this right here. Text small. Well, this isn't necessary because we're not displaying any text. Let's change the color to amber 400. Flex, item center, gap 2. Yeah. We can also add something for our screen reader here. So we can say this is favorite. If I can spell. And let's just add the class of SR only to this button. Yeah. So now if we go back to Chrome and take a look at it, this is what we have here. Cool. Now we're almost done with our UI. I think now we're going to try to make it a little bit more responsive, because if I should minimize this thing, you can see where it looks ridiculous, to say the least. Or at least whenever this thing is open, we don't want it to act like this. We want this to completely replace everything here. And then when we close it, then we get back to this screen, but only on mobile devices. Cool. So let's just go back to VS Code and get that going. So the first thing that we want to do is bring in our Boolean that will check if we're on a mobile device or tablet. And we're going to actually get this from the use device module that we installed at the beginning of this thing. So if we type in use device, of course, that's a function. It should be equal to, and you can see if we press Control and space, the different booleans that we can actually get from this package. Now the one that we want is the is mobile or tablet boolean, right? So this will detect if our user is coming from a mobile device or they're on desktop device, etc. If they're on a mobile device, we want to add some classes conditionally to this component, right? So here, we're going to say if the message open property is true and the is mobile or tablet property is true, then we want to add these classes. So the class that we want to add here is hidden. If this is not the case, then we don't want to add any additional classes. Cool. So if we go back to Chrome and we should make this responsive or turn this into a mobile view. Let me just refresh. And we click on this thing, we can see where this UI replaces the list of messages. And if we go back, we now have our list of messages again. Cool. And I think that's pretty much it. I deployed this to Netlify. The deployment process is very simple for Netlify. Once you log into Netlify with your GitHub account, you can just go ahead and add a new site. So import an existing project, right? Or we're going to get it from GitHub. It's going to authorize, and then it's going to pull in all of your repositories from GitHub. So if I should search for the email one, you can see where I have this from the list. You can select it, and this is the default configuration for Nuxt 3. And then you can click on deploy site. I already have it deployed, so I won't do this again, but click on deployed site, and then it will do its thing. It deploys the application real quick. So once you click deploy, it will deploy the website. It usually does it real quick, and it will give you a free domain name. You can update that domain name if you like, or if you have your own domain name, you can actually create a subdomain or use that as the domain name for your website. Cool. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The link to the repository will be in the description. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, and you may see this happening because with the use device composable, you have to actually refresh the page for the new user agent to be updated, and then it should work properly. On a mobile device, you probably won't have this problem. Your user won't have this problem unless they are testing out your application. So if they're manually going from this screen with the dev tools to this, then they'll run into this problem. All you have to do is refresh the page, and because the user agent is updated when the page is refreshed, you see it's actually working properly. Cool. So let me know if you have any questions. You can, like I said, just check out the repository and go through the code, and yeah, that's it.